Good afternoon. Have I got the graveyard shift then? Is everyone still awake? Good. Okay. Thank you very much for the invite today. I'm here to chat you through some of my experiences over the last decade of operating in the energy industry in Jersey, and to run you through some stuff on rooftop solar specifically. So a bit of what I'm going to go through, just of solar PV fundamentals, just about what the technology is, residential rooftop, commercial rooftop, and the kind of some numbers around the deployment and impact, and then prefer to take some questions at the end. So if there's a really burning question, please put your hand up and I'll see what I can do. So a bit about me and what gives me the kind of credentials to stand up here. So I'm a local electrician, I'm a local guy, and back in 2000, as early as 2008, my father and I met an interesting character who had some connections into California. At that time in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the mayor, probably the last good mayor of California, I'd argue. And, they had been starting solar deployment across car parks, factories, and actually the microchips that go into a lot of the robotics that make solar was all kind of doing in Silicon Valley at the time. So I got an early inside track into that. But we didn't even lay down a single solar panel until 2013, by which time the UK had already kind of started on its kind of solar journey. But so I spotted a gap in the market, and with my father, who's sitting over here, we started the very first efforts in Jersey at enabling solar technology to come to Jersey. If you fast forward to today, so SunWorks is a company of about 18 employees. We have a proven track record of 600 solar projects on the island. We have in-house CAD design teams, project managers, electricians, roofers, and we contract for JE, Co-op, JT, and a whole host of islanders. Our goal as a company is to enable Jersey's renewable energy future, whatever form that may bring or whatever size that may be. So a brief overview of PV. So one of the main key ones to get straight away is just the fundamental difference between solar PV and thermal. What we're finding in Jersey, there's still an education gap on, what solar PV is compared to solar thermal. And a lot there is in Sark and in Jersey, a lot of old legacy solar thermal around, which is designed just to heat water. And a very good job it does that of it too, when the system can be maintained and kept going. Solar PV, on the other hand, just generates electricity from the sun. It's a solid state technology, and so it doesn't have any moving or mechanical parts, which generally means it's less in maintenance. And electrical checks tend to be around every 5 years, something like that, with solar panel cleaning around the same period for residential homes. So this is an important one for me, and I just like this fact is that in 1 hour, the amount of energy that hits the earth is more than the entire world consumes in a year. So the magnitude of the sun has never been a mystery to me. I've always thought of it being a paramount importance to our civilization, to our way of being, and I just am interested in ways we can harness that sun in our everyday lives. And I don't purport to have all the answers, and I don't think most people working in the industry would, but it is a process to which we're working towards. So the photovoltaic effect is a natural phenomenon of chemical and physical, which converts sunlight into electricity when photons pass over a semiconducting material of different different positive and negative. Apologies. This then frees up the electron and then generates an electric current. These cells together form up an array to form up solar panels, which then form an array. So that's the fundamentals of solar. And, let's be honest, in the UK in 2010, there was the first egregiously high feed-in tariffs for solar. And it was a bit of a race to the bottom to see how many panels you can get on your roof in the most disgusting way possible. And we've all seen it around roundabouts in the UK. We've all seen the silver and blue panels that look there. I've been involved in this industry now for about 13 years, and it's definitely turned a corner. A lot you will see in some of maybe the poorer parts of the UK, these ones still sitting there and people still collecting check for, £2,000 a year or something like that. But it is starting to go away now, and we are starting to see the products of tomorrow come through. This is typically what we fit in Jersey. We retrofit into kind of middle income earner houses. And we're providing solar, which is quite discreet and built in. And, the idea is that it's low impact. It isn't designed to look particularly ugly, nor is it designed to, look particularly good. The look of solar is subjective. I've met all sorts of different people over the years, and everyone's got a different opinion about how they look. Some people like them and some people don't. But the idea is that building solar panels into the fabric of a building, especially if you're re-roofing, is a good idea. So how does solar work in Jersey specifically? Well, you're turning your roof into an energy generating asset by the conversion of sunlight into electricity. You're primarily offsetting the purchase of electricity. So this is your main form of savings. So when you generate a unit of electricity, you don't have to buy a unit from the grid. Now, not all the electricity occurs when you want it. So any surplus in Jersey is credited back at a true export rate of 0.9, which is basically your buyback rate, which is of 9 pence a unit. That goes up tracked with the energy price. So each year you could expect, and that's around about 40% of the retail rate. So that's not bad in Jersey. And we've always had a true export here, unlike in the UK where they used to kind of hazard a guess. They give you all the money for the generation and they kind of wouldn't ask any questions about the export and give you a kind of an approximate figure. So there's always been an actual meter which is fitted to record that. So this is the really big one, and that I think for solar in Jersey is that overall solar improves your energy mindset and your efficiency. So part of what we do with solar is you got given the tools to generate your own power. You then become what we call a prosumer. So we give you a new label. You're now not just a consumer. You have the ability to produce and you have the ability to sell energy and take control of your energy decisions. Funnily enough, when people start to see their energy being used, they start to really zoom in on it and they start making better choices for something that, they often say, if you can't manage the data, you can't really manage it at all. And that's really for the homeowner, there is no other technology that can do that apart from solar. So part of the equation is, generate some power. The other one is get a handle on what it is you're using. The other one is, I do think that it reduces your environmental impacts. Through the actions, it then perpetuates you to make those decisions. And also the upstream of Jersey not having to import in power from France that we can otherwise generate here. And I'm sure we could actually debate that till the cows come home, but I think that's an important one as well. It's the only option in Jersey you have as a user to hedge on future energy prices. Everyone here come up today and talking about utility scale solutions. Everyone here is talking about other grid scale stuff. Apart from the chap who mentioned micro CHP at the end there, the only other thing this is the only one today that works direct to consumer. So in Jersey, you can't switch supplier because there's no one to switch to. You can't negotiate with the JEC because they've got their own interests, and you can't switch tariff because there aren't any tariffs to switch to.
Do you mind? I know you said no questions, but there's a bit of a time pressure because I think Alex has got to shoot off to a plane. So you're talking about the sun generating a lot of electricity during the day and then not any at night time, etc. And Alex talked about these thermal batteries. Is there a link up there that could actually and that allow you to capture all the electricity during the day and then store it for when you need it at night? I don't even know which one of you answers that question, to be honest.
I'm sure you'd agree that is exactly what both technologies are really designed for. So it is something that, SunAmp, which is a company that we partner with, their first choice is to partner with PV. That is the way they design their product. Yeah. It can run on grid, it can run on a micro CHP, but they are designing it to run on PV.
At the moment, you've got a pretty healthy buyback rate in Jersey, 40% of retail rate. So you're saving on a battery is the difference between the export rate and then what you buy it for normally. So the thing about thermal batteries, you can't do arbitrage with the grid. You can't provide other grid services. You're quite limited in scope to just generating heat and then some surplus electric. I'll just jump back into this. So I'm going to get onto a bit of that and stuff in a moment. But yeah, you're right. A battery does fill some gaps depending on what the market is and what the interest is. So solar in its fundamental form is a solid state technology, and I sell it as low maintenance. And we're going back to sites now that have been going for over 10 years, and the same kit is still there doing the thing that we set it out to do. And some of the inverters we sell have 12-year warranties behind them, so they're, in 2 years' time they'll be coming up for end of life. But I have a feeling they will go on past that. The other thing we're seeing in Jersey is electric cars. Now, this might not be so much for the UK, but for Jersey, electric cars work very well. Short journeys, it's very hard on combustion engines. Regardless of what your political view is on electric vehicles and the green agenda, electric cars are an ideal fit for Jersey. And actually charging them from home is a really good way of doing that. And we charge electric vehicles at our office, and also we have customers who charge them at home. The charge will just turn on when the sun's there, and then you rely on the battery for the rest of the time to then just go you through those cloudy periods, like this afternoon, and then sure enough, a sunny day will eventually come round again. The sending of solar power to hot water cylinder via a special controller as well, and then also the idea of the battery. So this is a kind of energy solution that people are getting, and this we find is not so much the people interested in saving the money. These are your techies. These are the ones who are coming in who are interested in the kind of holistic energy system for a house and how they can control it. This is a solution. I actually think the guy who installed this is actually sitting in the room smiling in the back there. So this is for 15K, where you have a 5 kilowatt solar installation, you have a battery installation with an off-grid solution. So if there's nothing else for 15K that will back up your home in the event of a power failure.
What's the storage on that? So
that's 10 kilowatt hour.
10 kilowatt hours.
The Powerwall, by the way, is 13.4 kilowatt hours.
You could have a diesel generator, that might keep you going.
With this particular one, that doesn't accept an auxiliary input, but you can have a more flexible. SolarEdge is like the Apple of the solar world. It isn't really compatible with third-party stuff. But if you wanted, you could get an SMA Sunny Island, and you could absolutely put in a 16 amp or whatever, or a generator into that to subsidize it during the down months and use the battery more efficiently. So that is the other. So we have some people now post-storm coming to us, and their use case is very much geared around, how can I back up my home? How can I look after my family if the lights go out? And there isn't anything else out there apart from a residential backup solution. If you live in South Africa, that need is much higher, but in Jersey we have extremely good quality of power, and I don't anticipate, certainly in the short term, any issues, but if that was a concern to you, that is an option. So who are the residential solar customers today? They're people who are saying, I want to be self-sufficient, I want to reduce my energy bills, and we often hear, I want to do my bit and give back. So these tend to be people who are past middle age towards retirement, homeowners, approximately 600 of them in Jersey at the moment with solar. They tend to be middle or higher income earners, or they're within some kind of lifetime construction project where they're kind of releasing equity and doing that one big renovation, and they're trying to build in solar. That tends to be the model. I'm not sure when we're going to run out of those customers, but at some point, maybe we will. Yeah. And who is not the solar customer at the moment in Jersey? And this is kind of what I'm actually really interested in, and obviously the next decade, is the masses. So the vast majority of people still don't have access to solar power as a tool. The middle and lower income earners, people within social housing, younger people, environmentalists tend to be the people who are most passionate about it as well, and those without any spare capital, because as Alex alluded to earlier, if you come up with the wife with a choice between the new kitchen and the solar panels, I think the new bathroom's going to get it every time, isn't it? So that's just something we have to accept. But there is I still think solar is an important tool for these. So just to crunch a few numbers. Now, I've highlighted, and I tried my best to get this down. I could have just put the number, but I thought I would be asked about the numbers. So this, for a 3 kilowatt installation in Jersey, is what you could expect in terms of cost, and in terms of lifetime cost there, because I've included the cost of cleaning and repowering the system as well. So to come around to a fundamental levelized cost of energy of around what would be 8 pence a unit. Now, with solar, you can have that 8 pence a unit or £80 a megawatt hour, depending whether you're looking at it. But the catch is you have to pay for all that up front on day one. And most people just don't have that ability to pay for that on day one. But you can confidently know what it will generate over that 20-year period. But that is obviously the catch. It's some of the cheapest energy out there, but you do have to pay for it on day one. So I'm just going to, some of the challenges. So someone mentioned earlier on that, I think it was the chap Steve talking about nuclear power. There's an overall lack of an energy strategy. Get the right people in the room talking about energy and what are the pieces of the puzzle that fit in. Now, solar would benefit from that kind of collaboration. And just overall, Jersey needs that evidence-based strategy, which we hope is coming out later this year, which has actually going to be up for debate in the States soon. And ultimately, electricity has been left for JE to decide what happens. Now, anyone from here, from JE, absolute credit to you. I think it's an excellent organisation. I've been working with them over the last 10, 15 years. You can't get away from them in Jersey. They hold the cards when it comes to electricity, and they have their shareholders to answer to. And I think they do a really good job of balancing the needs of the island with what the government set them to do, which is to make sure that they look after affordability, security, and make sure energy is low carbon. And they have done a good job of that. But and they wouldn't mind me saying this because it's no secret, I've been to see them many times about this, is some of the what I call friction to adoption with solar customers. And this comes from looking at it from the customer side rather than from a technical side. So what it does is these technical challenges, typically around metering, typically around the absence of tariffs, and typically around a lack of transparency, they create basically a lack of, no one else can innovate in the space. No one else can contribute to the space, and no one else can really come up with solutions. You're just kind of waiting. And there are some customers who they direct their anger at me. It's like, I'm just the installer here, but then actually we need to come up with, okay, what does the customer want? And ultimately, they're the main shareholders in JE as well, and they should have a say in how this goes. But typically, there are technical challenges around three-phase adoption, around JE's own app and the integration with solar, a lack of transparency and the costs that make up the buyback and other things. If you want electricity, solar installation from JE, you have to buy a fuel switch as well, so you have to buy an electric boiler with that. And so, like I said before, a little bit of mixed messaging on the website. It's quite not sure what their offering is, but a reframing from both government and JE with just a few barriers dropped would just clear things out a little bit, and I think allow people who are otherwise on the fence to come forward. So for me, just to kind of wrap up the residential solar bit, solar should be, I believe, a norm for new builds. This is the number one thing I'm asked the most whenever I walk into rooms. There's that solar guy. Why aren't solar on all new builds? The answer is I don't know, but it hasn't got the right push. Now, before it's had very much an environmental approach, well, Jersey's already got low carbon power, so we don't really need solar power to kind of replace what we already have. But I would say it's actually it's a tool for social use. It is a tool for giving some power back to the homeowner to generate some own power and hedge on future prices. So ultimately, solar is the tool that allows the homeowner to use natural resources, which is the sun. It's scalable, abundant, it's predictable in its nature, and it's fast to deploy. And I know what people say about the weather day to day, can't predict it, but we tend to look at things over a year, and you accept some intermittency with that. And over the last decade, the aesthetics of solar have improved monumentally to where they are today. This is what we're moving into now, which is if you're going to replace your roof, you might as well just put some solar panels in there, because the cost of buying slates and having a roofer go over that bit, for an extra small uplift, you can have a typical house like this will have 40% of its energy use covered by those solar panels. So commercial and utility. This is the Durrell reuse centre. This is Acorn. Notice the two charities there. The ones that, again, and I'll come on to why they are. So with commercial embedded generation, this is basically solar, but for commercial businesses at the same premise as residential solar. Essentially, it's a business to business, and it allows the business to say, I'm going to invest in the future by buying all my energy up front, a portion of my energy, I should say, for 25 years, and to hedge on a future energy price. Now, there's not many businesses in Jersey with pockets deep enough to make that bet, because if the payback's 8 to 10 years, well, then most business managers aren't going to be around for that long. The ones that are making those decisions now are the social enterprises. Government should be moving much faster forward with this because they know that they're going to be around for the foreseeable. It's financed and operated and maintained by the owner. It is subject to a standby charge, which amounts to about 25% of your savings being recouped back by JE. This is a payment for the units you did not buy from them, but you've obviously generated yourself. So this is quite unique to Jersey and Guernsey, which essentially is a charged for them being ready to then. So let's say you just didn't use your solar power that day, you'd expect JE to just fill in the gaps for you. And they say that there's a cost over and above what you pay on your normal daily standing charge. To give you an idea on the scale of where, so up to 70 kilowatts, that's about the charge. Over 70 kilowatts, the charge almost doubles and then is allowed to be variable year on year, which makes building an investment case for large commercial solar for those above 70 kilowatts near on impossible, which is why all of the commercial solar in Jersey is owned by JE, which I'll come on to in a moment. So the system size, 70 kilowatts, total lifetime cost would be 203k. 90k of that over the 25 years is standby charge in this scenario. So those businesses that are making this step will be paying back 90k to JE. They would claim that that is just a recoup of costs, but there's no transparency, so I can't verify it one way or the other. So the lifetime output, this is your factored with the standby charge. Commercial solar, this is the kind of the price we're seeing here. So 107 megawatt hour, a little bit on the high side. When it goes above 70, like I said, I've only got one case of this where a customer said, okay, I'd like to go ahead. I submitted the application to the network for them to introduce this generator. They then sent back, this is actually £6 per kilowatt per month, which was about 40% more than the previous one that I showed you. And also they reserve the right to then adjust that charge annually depending on how much of your power you consume on site.
Sorry, just to interrupt myself.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that in Jersey they charge you because you didn't buy from them?
Yeah. Yes.
Is it simple?
So whether you have so this was a commercial, let's say you did that at the anaerobic digestion the gentleman mentioned earlier, or your own CHP unit, they will charge you for being there on what they call standby, because they say, well, that's your primary source of energy, even though it isn't. We still want you to foot the bill for the energy you didn't buy. Now, arguably, in other places in the world, people just take that as solar's providing some benefits, so we'll spread any cost of that over all bill payers, because in some way or another, we all benefit from the energy that's coming out of that place as well as it's going in. So this is very expensive at this point. This is why there is no private large-scale commercial solar on the island, because of the standby charge. This was a review at quite an expense actually to government back in 2018, and I was the only person that was really kind of pushing back about, didn't know as much as I did now about it. In one way or another, the report comes to the conclusion that the charge was fair, and until there's an energy strategy which either overrides this or deems this as some way, we're going to cover that cost elsewhere, or we're going to redistribute it in a different way, this stands as kind of something that JE can then stand behind. And that's fine. We've kind of worked around it for now. And what's come out of it is this is the only installation in Jersey that a private owner paid for, but they export it all to the grid. So this is a more traditional, what you call a PPA arrangement, where power purchase agreement. So it's not advertised or promoted in Jersey in any way. It's not subject to the standby charge because you're not offsetting your own generation, so your own consumption. The owner pays for the O&M costs and everything else. And ultimately, there's a negotiation there between the building owner and the energy supplier, JE. And this is the mechanism by which most kind of large commercial solar works on a building which is kind of oversized for its needs. The roof is higher than its energy needs, and this is kind of how you'd see it. At the moment, you can collect the residential buyback rate because there's no other mechanism for negotiation. So with commercial rooftop solar, this is where you can see the impact of the standby charge charge had on the last one. This is the same set of figures, but without the standby charge. So it really makes a huge difference. So we're now, what it's developed as, we have one down there that's done it, because they've got, again, a long-term horizon. They own the building. Again, that's quite rare. They're a company that's not going anywhere in Jersey. These ones here are what we call the partnership or the air lease. Now, SunWorks still gets the contract for installation because we're the only ones in Jersey who can. But ultimately, these are 100% owned and operated by JE. So these are our own energy company building its own solar generating assets by leasing out rooftops from buildings. Now, in some scenarios where you haven't got any capital to deploy, or you have a roof which is way in excess of your energy usage, this might be a good option for you. It's very kind of hands-off, quite a lot of paperwork at the beginning, but if you can get through that, it's actually a really great option. They'll also roll up that money onto day one. So if you've got a capital project you want to spend money on, like a fuel switch or EV charging, they'll actually pay you that up front for signing the lease. So really great. Got an initiative going through for St Clement's Parish Hall at the moment, which is help paying for their EV chargers and their new electric heat pumps. So I think it's good. I think that's, in that sense, it's good, but it's not exactly a one-size-fits-all. It really stifles the ability for those businesses who need it the most to make the savings from before here, which is a fundamentally low price for energy anywhere. So.
Oh, sorry, it's this person to what we're talking about now, but is that standby charge applicable when they put it on agricultural land?
Anyone who's got limited at the top of their bill will be charged a standby charge. So it hits all the social enterprises as well. And they've obviously, made a big issue about this. And I encourage anyone, to write there. So any of the innovative ideas Alex had earlier about AD within, agriculture, within CHP, the standby charge was actually resuscitated from when tomato growers in Jersey had CHP on site as well, because then there was obviously this idea that they were somehow unfairly subsidising themselves with when they wanted and then not paying their fair share to JE. But my argument is that might be reasonable, but we're nowhere near there yet. That's like maybe once we get to a significant more amount of actual solar capacity in Jersey. So apparently it's nothing new. It's been around. Anyone here was a farmer during the tomato days? Yep.
Sorry, Mark. Does anybody check the additional dead load on the roof or all this equipment?
Yeah. So when there's a commercial,
who would do that?
So structural engineer.
So somebody have to pay for a structural engineer.
It's all factored into costs. So all of those types of costs are factored into, obviously, the breakdown of every single component. Yeah. Assuming those figures assume you don't need any work doing to your roof, right? So that'll be the cost of a survey is, £1,500 to have them thoroughly look over it. And, I'll come on to one of the challenges and the fifth one down there. So the standby charge is the overwhelming barrier to commercial adoption in the private sphere. This makes financing options out of reach. I've got a commercial solar financer who's ready, but by the time you add on their cut, it's just a bit out of reach. In the UK, you can have what they call a no-brainer. So you can have you can have it financed and you're literally no worse off, if not better off than you are. So fit it, of course, why not? Why wouldn't I? We're nowhere near that here. So there's a lack of options for private developers to get involved in the market and actually generate revenue for themselves and their businesses. And you've got structural challenges which we're finding, especially on agricultural buildings around the island, which weren't really designed for solar. They're not even designed for people to be working in. So there's a potential uplift in cost for making these buildings stronger. So this is my estimate. SunWorks has fitted 6 megawatts of solar locally. About half of that's residential rooftop, about half of that's commercial. I think a conservative estimate would be for 7 megawatts in 10 years. That's just kind of trundling on at the same rate we are now. No particular change in policy or anything. This is just private homeowners. To get to the moderate, there needs to be, I think, some shift in an overwhelming policy where solar is part of new builds, or it is introduced to social housing schemes, or it is some way more widely accepted. That would mean that 4,000 homes in Jersey had solar at the moderate estimate in 10 years. And that would be kind of pretty much 1 in 5 homes have some form of solar power. 1 in 5 homes have some form of solar power. For the commercial, again, I think that we're probably we would do well to hit the conservative one here at our current trajectory, because at some point we're either going to run out of people who want to sign the lease or people who have buildings which are viable. To unlock the moderate, you'll need to have attractive PPAs which are forward-looking, which give a price for energy, which doesn't just look at today, what we're importing it for, but looks at it 10, 15 years into the future and makes basically an assumption based on that. So you need a supplier who's willing to want to pay that and to then hedge a future of their import prices against having solar on island. And so the kind of 20 megawatts one there is, again, subject to there being a change in policy. I'm not going to go to the ambitious yet because, I think that the moderate hits a nice spot. So overall, combined residential and commercial, if we could hit 30 megawatts with some, as part of Ireland's energy mix, that would take Jersey's total supply from solar up to 6%. I messaged my friend who works for Jersey Electricity earlier on the kind of, I know that JE's ambition in the kind of short term is to power 5,000 homes, which is about 32 megawatts or something like that, with a combination of what already exists in Jersey plus some ground mount sites. I think the target is for 20 megawatts of ground mount sites with 10 megawatts of rooftop solar, both residential and their own commercial leases as well. So a solar panel has an energy debt of about 1.5 years attached to it, to 2 years. So in that time, everything from this table to these chairs to everything you see has an energy debt attached to it. Solar panels come under fire for that because they obviously themselves generate energy. What we do, like any consumer choice, is you just make the best choices you can to pick the manufacturers which align with your ethics. And for us, we use one called ICO Solar, part owned by Chinese government, which is very hard to find solar panels that aren't made in some part by China. I think hopefully the current the economic unrest might stimulate some growth elsewhere. Otherwise, you're pretty much locked into buying from Chinese, which for me is one of the most frustrating things about operating in this space. The refinance and repower, I feel this is more than solar panels just dying or someday you just go there and it's not working. What's going to happen is there'll be a new investment which basically refinances your whole package. So you'll be able to repower the whole system and send your current system off for recycling. There's new recycling plants popping up all the time for solar, and pretty much everything can be recycled. The main one, in which they're phasing out now in solar panels, is backing sheets. There's plastic backing sheets on solar panels. Nearly all solar panels soon will be bifacial glass, and they're going to be removing the plastics from inside solar panels. And also with advances in technology, whether it's kind of graphene or perovskites, hopefully the precious metals element will be gone soon as well. But for me, it's really important. One thing I always say to people, technology is a conveyor belt. So unless people buy stuff today, nothing happens to tomorrow. And with people who tend to be against renewables, they say, well, why haven't you got this far yet? Well, why haven't you got that far yet? It's like, well, it is a process. We had to, don't just arrive at the answer on day one. You have to go there through trial and error, through building wind turbines which disintegrate into the sea, and then building back stronger ones, right? And that's how we get an advancing. We don't just arrive at the answer straight away. So certainly solar power has some answers, within poor mining and exploitation and also within recycling, but we all just make an effort to do better. So my conclusion is that I'd like to see solar as a norm for Jersey, mainly from a social perspective. I think it's a great tool for the homeowner and for businesses to be able to unlock new revenue. I think that the sun is a predictable ally of ours, and for as long as it's around, we're around. And I just don't think that I can see a world where we're not somehow including wind, tidal and solar into that. And that was interesting what you said before about how you said, I expect this energy when I want it, and I expect the world to fit around when I want energy. Well, I kind of take the other view, which is that I see the natural resources and I want to see how we can fit around them first and fill in the gaps with those finite resources like oil and gas. So Jersey can have a 6 to 10% of its energy in the next 10 years from solar. But I think the social impact on 1 in 4, 1 in 5 houses having solar will be tenfold on that. 6 to 10%, I think that's an achievable aim. Currently at 1.5 or something like that. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll start with the panel, as we always do.
Yeah.
Questions, and then we'll turn it to the audience.
Yeah. Okay, I go first. Just wish to make a comment about the pattern of intermittency of solar power. I mean, we live in Aberdeen. And in Aberdeen, the sun barely gets above the horizon in November, December, and January. And in the summertime, it hardly sets. The pattern of intermittency diminishes the further you go south. At Mediterranean latitudes, there's a much more equal distribution of day and night between summer and winter. So the first point, or the main point I would make, is the utility of solar depends very much on the latitude that you're at. And I'm not quite, Jersey, I imagine, is perhaps at some kind of intermediate.
But I think the important thing is you know what that number is.
Jack,
Yeah.
sorry, can you think about that answer for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Because Simon's got 10 minutes. And what I'd like to do, if you're okay, it's not. Oh, okay, forget it. Okay, then you're out of here.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that.
That's all right.
I'd like to quickly say, fantastic. You know, we represent science, and we represent photovoltaic capability, and we can't wait to be working with you guys. You know, we're a material scientist perspective, and we're producing energy, huge amounts of energy from graphene, organic perovskites as well. So it'd be great.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, great job.
Cheers.
Okay, sorry about that. I just
That's
wanted
all
to.
right. I think with you're right, and you know, Scotland isn't the best, is certainly isn't, and so I know solar power in Norway as well. They're not the best for solar, but ultimately, forget the day to day. The people, you know what that figure is at the end. What it will have is from a kilowatt of solar, you'll have an output that you can get from a kilowatt of installed power. So you know what that's going to be. So whoever's financing, if they're happy with that number, everything else is water under the bridge, isn't it?
Just one follow-on comment. Are you familiar with the work of David Mackay, who wrote the book? Well, at the time of his death, about a decade ago, he was probably the most famous energy analyst in the world. He very sadly died of cancer. Prior to that, he was the energy advisor to the UK government. He's a professor of physics at Cambridge. But before he died, he made a point of giving a final interview, and when asked about solar, his main comment was, Britain is one of the darkest countries in the world.
Okay.
There's nothing outside the sunniest place in
Can I go?
Yeah.
So that's fair enough, but we can still accurately predict what Britain will generate, and if that's enough for whoever's financing it, who's to say otherwise?
Correct.
If it's subsidy free, I would no objection.
So that's quite interesting. Joe's almost a little test case. Is that this was a level playing field. When the standby charge was levied in 2019, Jay was saying that's the level playing field, but I didn't have the numbers or the evidence to come back at that one way or the other. So they think this is level, but there's going to be a point where the price of the electricity from the grid, especially whatever happens with external, you know, whether the renegotiation doesn't go well, we get wind power, the prices like to go up, right? Jersey's very fortunate to have the energy prices it does at the moment. Solar will probably be coming down because of Moore's law and the cost of the decrease in the cost of producing solar panels and everything else. The cost of labour in Jersey is going up. So we've gone like this with efficiency and like this with efficiency, but that with labour. So our prices stayed relatively flat. But ultimately, with any solar investment, you have to concentrate on what the output is going to be rather than the intermittency in between, and that comes from, you know, I think those problems can be solved. I do.
Okay. Any more? All right. Can I make a few points? I've studied this quite recently, actually, from at home, and a lot of your presentation I found totally reasonable and fair, by the way. What's your yield factor at this latitude? I know in the south of England, it's about 11%. You get about 11% load factor on it. Have you any idea what it is here? It'll be about 12, I imagine.
So yield factor.
Well, how much you get out? If you imagined a 1 kilowatt panel going a 1 kilowatt 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and instead of getting that, which is impossible, obviously, you get a certain amount. That's the yield factor.
Yeah, so
or the
we
load
work,
factor,
yeah.
or so on.
So we work on part of Scotland, I know, can go as low as 650 kilowatt hours per kilowatt of installed solar. In Jersey, operate on about 1,180.
Well, I've just said that's great.
Yeah.
That's 12%, that's 11.8%.
Right.
So, so what you've just confirmed is what I thought. So I don't need to know that. In the UK, all the people who haven't got money have solar because they're allowed to be given it free. So I get brochures through every day at my home. If you're on Social Security, we're going to install a free solar and we'll put a free boiler in and we'll do everything. So everyone who's got all these things is in social housing, right? It's the exact opposite. I imagine you have no subsidies here.
No.
Okay. Now, the big thing about solar is it comes... I found the payback for my house would be about 10 years, 11 years. And I'm 80, so it maybe not be worth it, right? So I might not make it. So, but you need the battery. Without the battery, it made no sense at all, because the energy's occurring in the middle of the day, and the buyback is not as good as it's a good buyback, 9p. You've got 40%, but and that's dependent on the future. You can't control that future. But the problem is, it comes in the middle of the day. So in Britain, we have to get the gas out the way. And getting the gas out the way is enormously expensive. And so there are huge costs on society, on everyone else's bills, because of solar. So in the UK, not only are they installing up to £30,000 worth of stuff in social housing free, one after the other. There's multiple companies doing it now. Not only are they doing that, but they're putting those bills up for everybody else, yes? And it's this in the middle of the day. Now, the peak time, and I've got the distribution throughout the day in the UK down to, I can look it up on the phone now. I can't get that here, but I imagine the peak time is dinner time in the evening. I imagine that's the peak time, and that's when you haven't got your solar. So you've got to have stored it. But you're right, all that matters is the mathematics of that calculation.
I don't think here we're going to be getting towards the grid penetration levels you've got in the UK. We're so far behind per capita in solar. Like I said, in the next 10 years, if we did 6%, we're doing pretty well, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that, yeah. But in the UK, I agree. I agree. And you haven't got the gas to get out of the way, whereas you've got the French connection to get out of the way, which doesn't cost you in that sense, right? So you haven't got that penalty here. Yeah, I understand what you've said completely. I just found out a few things. So that's it really for it. You know, the best of luck. I mean, providing it's not subsidised by the rest of the taxpayers in Jersey, then it's fine, because it's just a matter of mathematics. I do find this policy it's like Marks and Spencer saying, well, you just walked past the door and you didn't come in and buy a shirt, so I'm going to tax you. That's a bit like that for your electricity people who are saying, oh, you didn't buy electricity for months, so I'm going to tax you on it. I found that incredible. Yeah, we don't have that.
So I think that all of the charges need to operate the grid should be made up in a daily standing charge, which everyone pays anyway. So in the absence of solar, that would still exist. And also, if you suddenly, when you decide to use a half less power, they're not then charging you for the amount you didn't use. You see, your purchase and then dropped by you using less. Well, the way they experience solar is the same. They just see less of power coming from them. So it was a very blunt instrument to put out something which was pretty small. And that's why I think when this evidence approach energy strategy comes forward, obviously I'm going to be reviving this again and looking at it once again, whether it's in the best interest of Jersey and especially the businesses that operate here who want another source of revenue.
What I have separated out is all the CO2 stuff and all the pay and payback periods. There was one paper from Germany that said anything north of Morocco never pays back its CO2 footprint. But here today we're just talking economics, and that's all I've questioned you about. The best of luck in your business.
Thank you very much. That's fine. Don't apologise. It's fine.
Was it degradation, dirt and hailstones? I remember seeing a photo, that must be very unlikely, where a huge solar array in a field was totally destroyed by hailstones. Now, I don't know how often we get in Jersey, but obviously these things need cleaning, presumably, and how quickly does
the rain pretty much cleans them all the time, and especially if you have windy conditions like this, they take care of a lot of it.
Degradation with the heat on it.
have
the efficiency of the panel, does it drop like we were saying?
Rather than some kind of major degradation, what's going to happen is technology will just somehow, the stuff we're fitting today, in 20 years' time, there'll be something that's so much better, you basically refinance the whole of your thing, you'll recycle what you have and you'll replace it with the next thing.
And the lifetime does work in your case. The lifetimes are real.
Yeah, and they are. And each panel has a warranty degradation of about 0.5% per year linear. So which means if it drops below that, 20% in its 20-year lifetime, apparently they'll give you a warranty claim. I don't know how you realistically measure it. You know, there are some solar panel companies that have gone bust. So when you're picking a solar panel, you just want to make sure you pick a company that's going to be there in 20 years' time.
There's lots of cowboys in the UK, I'll tell you.
There has been a problem with doing solar cheap and fast in the UK, and it's still.
I just want to make sure I got at the question for people. Okay, any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I read a couple of months ago that the World Bank had done a study on solar suitability through different parts of the world, and I'm pretty sure Great Britain, or certainly the UK or England, was 99th out of 100 on the list. And so
it's 189 out of 190.
Oh, that's what it was.
And the only one worse than us is Ireland.
I knew there was one.
Right.
There was only one worse. And I suppose, you know, picking up what you were saying earlier, that if the numbers work and people are
That's it.
that is what matters.
You just need more panels to make it work for you. That's all.
And I think that your presentation was good. I mean, very interesting. Yeah. But
I find it honest. Yeah.
do you not think that this is really appealing to the wealthier people on the island? It's, you know, anything between £10,000 and £50,000 maybe, depending on whether you want a small solar array or something with a big battery and want to be totally off grid. It's sort of an emotional purchase, I think, for a lot of people. It isn't really going to make any significant differences to the net zero.
But you could say that about any purchase. That car's really not going to make you a better person, or that kitchen's really, and I don't know why energy gets the cop for it. People just want to generate their own power, just let them do it.
I think it's when it's sold on being the saviour for
Yeah.
all the
Well, everything's been over politicized these days, isn't it? Everything's over politicized. Everything's you're either in that camp or you're in that camp, this box. Honestly, like, generating power from the sun is a good idea. I just can't say that enough.
I think your whole presentation is a really good example of how, you know, you presented that something can work.
Yeah, thank you.
And nobody's going to deny that it can work. Whether it's the right thing to do and whether it actually makes financial sense in a big enough scale, I think is another question.
Thank you. And I think people in the UK need to be, maybe, if there's another choice out there which works better for our climate than solar, then, you know, unfortunately for micro wind, I've been waiting for wind to have its day, and I don't think it ever will, because planning constraints, NIMBYs, it's all harder. The barrier to entry for wind is so much more difficult. And from a small wind turbine, you don't really generate it. You also have noise problems as well. You know, the neighbours that you don't get along with, they're going to complain about your wind turbine. We have wind in the UK, but also we've heard micro wind is the most expensive form of power. If you talk about utility scale wind. So you don't really have any options in the UK. And unfortunately, solar's created a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, whereas bringing more solar onto the grid has created higher prices for everyone, but now they're using solar to hedge against that very thing.
So now they've got this loop going to negative pricing on it now. There's so much solar that it's going to, what the plan, they're going to overtake the demand. And so now we're going to be paying to give it away or paying to not have it.
It's embracing gases and actually those natural gases and actually trying to use those for storage and other intuitive ways. And I think Britain's going to force itself into this kind of, it's either going to innovate its way out of it or else it's going to have this major energy problem.
No,
right?
we have it already. We have the crisis already. Can I just say, for backup, I use a 6.5 kilowatt generator, and it costs me to run that, if I have to have, it's a third of my electricity price. So I could actually operate, I don't want the noise, but I could operate the house for a third of the cost now that I pay to the electricity people. Mm-hmm. That was just using straightforward. And I'm allowed to use red diesel for that because it's heating, it's supplying the house. And just like oil, I have oil, I'm in the country, so I've got oil. But, you know, solar's got a place. And I think you did a very fair, balanced presentation.
Thanks very much.
Sorry, one final point that you might find interesting. We operate a very large warehouse in Milton Keynes, and and it's a new facility, so brand spanking new, AAA green rated for energy and all of these things. And we've looked at in the last 3 or 4 years, and in fact it's been offered to us, or at least initial discussions have been started on people coming and fitting out our roof, way bigger than any of the things locally, for free. But it's fallen over because the grid actually can't take the excess power back into the grid.
That's right.
So there are lots of reasons why these things, whilst in principle they look great, but when the rubber hits the road and reality hits, I've got a massive roof that I'd love to cover in solar panels, purely from a, economic perspective.
They wouldn't take any of it, not even a reduced size system.
And they can't even take it.
But they can't take it because it's coming in at the wrong time of day. It's coming in the middle of the day, basically, and they need it in the evening. And there's no storage solution, forget that. But that applies to Britain. It doesn't apply here. There's a long way to go before you get anywhere near that here. So you've got a completely different situation in Jersey. But there's clearly a role for solar in Jersey, clearly a role for it. But in the UK now, it's madness. We're going to treble our solar, and we're going to have too much power we can't use, and that sort of thing is the result you get. Okay.
Just one other comment. Part of the reason why solar is getting a bit of a bad name on the street is because the solar panels on the fields, people would say, well, why we can't put buildings on our fields? We're trying to protect the land. Why would we put them on our fields or an open space like that? That doesn't seem to make sense. But having said that, that's created a bad image, I think. Whereas putting it on your roofs are already there. It's a choice individuals can make. There's lots of room and there's some benefits. And yeah, maybe it's for the rich, but what's wrong with the rich if they want to do it? So I think there's freedom of choice, and things will improve with time.
I think that ground mount solar, and I have credit to Jersey Electricity for going down and actually trying something in Jersey. If you go to the ground mount site at St Clements, I've been for a walk around, it's been done very sympathetically for a solar farm. It does sit with the natural surroundings to an extent. They haven't put huge perimeter fences up. They haven't paved the whole thing over. They have left it like that, and they are trying something which I think is very good for Jersey to do. And if it doesn't work in 30 years, well, it can go back to being a field again. No love lost.
The potato land on the island.
The farmer there couldn't make it work.
It's the best potato land on the
island. No, the point
is gross.
He's got plenty of other fields though. He has.
No, the point isn't that. The point is we have made a decision not to allow any new buildings because we want to protect farmland. So I don't think it came to the people to say, oh, that law applies to buildings, but it doesn't apply to other things. So that's the point I'm raising. And the bigger issue is that when decisions like this are being made by the government, whether it's going carbon neutral, whether it's we can give up some of the land if we particularly like it for something other than farmland and for other areas not, I encourage the government to really think carefully because there's a lot of people out there who have views and things like that really need to be discussed before they're done because, that there's a contradiction in that. Just because there's more potatoes farms doesn't mean they could do the same for houses, so we have to, that's my point. Okay, go ahead, another question. Sorry.
Do you think our government will ever give subsidies or grants like they've done for electric cars, air source heat pumps? Why can't they give them for solar?
I don't think so.
I know you said that was like for the richer people, but it depends on the size of your house.
I don't think it will come from the environmental side because they're basically, the policies are driven around the fuel switching of heating and transport to electric, and that's a decarbonisation thing. Solar can't assist that in any way, which is why it's been left out. It does fit in with, if you read through these policy documents, it fits with their broader scope of what they want to achieve, but there isn't anything that's tangible. Do I think they'll do it? Not unless there's a rethink of the energy strategy. So we've discussed a bit about how the Bridging Island plan's up for renewal. I think there's a good opportunity in the next couple of years to get on the agenda, but I think from an economic and a social perspective, it's actually a better angle than the environmental one because that's already very much on the fuel switching element. So it could do, but we need to take a different approach to it. Yeah.
And every subsidy costs you, the taxpayer.
I know.
I think it's a nice, just to give you an idea of homeowners, when we fit solar panels to someone's house, assuming they have not a kind of wild energy user, 30 to 40%. If you just fit the solar and just kind of leave it a year later, that'll be pretty much what they've generated from their own supply. But probably about 50 to 60% of that will be export back as well, which then creates a bit of a credit. So just with that would make a big difference to some people. You know, solar will generate a 3 kilowatt system, generate £500 of electricity a year. So it's nothing to turn your nose up at.
And would social housing be included in this? Andean, for example.
Yeah, but they need to be able to have access to talking creatively about tariffs and how they want to do it. And in the moment, it's very much a closed thing. There's not much transparency. And to be fair to Jay, they're very straight. No one gets concessions. Not even government, not even any of the utilities. They are straight shooters at that sense, but they're not really innovating with Andy and with other players in the market to say, okay, well, what's important to you then? You know, how can data centers reduce their power by offsetting with solar? You know, they're always going to have a customer there. Yeah. But I do think they need to be a bit more open in their approach to these matters.
Well, thank you very much. And very informative. No, really, that was very informative.
Thank you very much.